Hi, I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Nuclear talks between the Europeans and Iranians conclude in Geneva. Donald Trump to decide on U.S. involvement in the Israeli-Iranian conflict within 2 weeks. Denmark to push for Ukraine's EU membership during European Council presidency. Thank you for tuning in. On day 8th of the Israeli-Iranian conflict, foreign ministers of Britain, Germany, France and the EU's top diplomat met with Iranian foreign minister in Geneva for talks on his country's nuclear program. The talks came as Tehran said it will not negotiate with the US unless Israel halts its attacks.
Today was the discussions we had with Iran is that the regional escalation benefits no one, and that's why we need to keep the discussions with Tehran open. We agreed that we will discuss nuclear but also broader issues that we have and keep the discussions open. So I would stay here.
Did you make any progress?
Well, it was important to come from Washington, D.C. this morning and to be here with my European colleagues and to have these discussions with Iran. We were clear. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and the E3 in Europe have been clear for many years that that cannot happen. We are keen to continue ongoing discussions and negotiations with Iran, and we urge Iran to continue their talks with the United States.
As the talks in Geneva were underway, the United Nations Security Council gathered for another meeting on the Israeli-Iranian conflict. UN Secretary General called on all parties to give peace a chance. The head of the UN Nuclear Watchdog Agency warned against attacks on nuclear facilities and called for maximum restraint. China and Russia said Israel should cease fire, while the US called on Iran to abandon its nuclear ambitions so that there is no more destruction.
The world is watching with growing alarm. We are not drifting toward crisis. We are racing toward it. We are not witnessing isolated incidents. We are on course to potential chaos. The expansion of this conflict could ignite a fire that no one can control. We must.
For more on the reactions on the global stage and the nuclear talks, we go to William Denslow in Brussels.
The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says there is a trust gap in this crisis, and we've certainly seen that playing out on Friday. We've heard from Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador to the UN, who says that these talks in Geneva cannot be just that. They can't be just talks. He says he wants to see genuine efforts to dismantle Iran's capabilities. That has been reiterated by Israeli representatives in Geneva, saying that they want to see a total rollback of Iran's nuclear capabilities and missile program. We've also heard directly from Iran's foreign minister on Friday, Abbas Araghchi, speaking at the United Nations Human Rights Council taking place in Geneva. He said that Israel had carried out what he described as outrageous acts of aggression. He said that these attacks on peaceful nuclear facilities that the IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, was monitoring was a grave war crime. He has called for the international community to stand up for the pillars of the rule of international law. Now, these talks in Geneva are taking place between Iran's foreign minister and the so-called E3 foreign ministers from the UK, Germany and France, as well as the EU's top diplomat and foreign affairs chief Kaja Kallas. These talks come as US President Donald Trump has provided a 2-week period where he says the US will decide whether to join Israel's military campaign against Iran. David Lammy, the UK's Foreign Secretary, has said that this provides a window to de-escalate tensions. He says that this is an opportunity for diplomacy to prevail. William Denslow, Frey News in Brussels.
Ahead of the meeting in Geneva, Tehran harshly criticized European countries and the International Atomic Energy Agency over Israel's attacks and the recent resolution passed by the IAEA. Artura Shiralilu has all the details in Tehran.
One of the key developments surrounding Iran today is the high-level meeting in Geneva between Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi, his French, German, and UK counterparts, as well as the EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. The meeting takes place against the backdrop of escalation between Iran and Israel and the uncertainty over the future of nuclear talks. Prior to the meeting, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai said the European side proposed the Geneva meeting in a move which is seen as a late diplomatic push by Europe to deal with the nuclear issue and Israel's attacks against Iran. Iran is highly critical of both the European Troika and the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA for adopting a resolution on the 12th of June by the UN nuclear watchdog on Iran's non-compliance of its nuclear obligations, which Tehran says was used as a pretext by Israel to invade Iran on the 13th of June. The head of Iran Atomic Energy Organization, Mohammad Islami, in a letter to the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi, has strongly criticized him for failing to condemn Israel's attacks on Iran's nuclear sites, which are monitored by the agency. He urged Grossi to carry out his obligations by ending inaction and by slamming Israel's attacks, and said Iran will hold him accountable for his lack of due action. Also, the foreign minister's spokesman has poured scorn on the IAEA chief for acting too late in acknowledging that there was no evidence of systematic effort by Iran to move toward nuclear weapons. However, Grossi, in an interview with the Bloomberg, has rejected criticism of his mismanagement of Iran's nuclear program. He refrained to condemn Israel's attacks on Iran's nuclear sites, saying he has technical, not political, duties. Rachid Alilu, reporting for News TV, Tehran.
As the Israeli-Iranian conflict rages on, the White House says that President Donald Trump wants 2 more weeks before deciding on possible U.S. military involvement. Our Ubay Shabander has more in Washington.
Wanting to give more time for a diplomatic solution, President Trump has said that he wants at least 2 more weeks before he decides whether to order U.S. military involvement with the ongoing Israeli strikes against Iran's nuclear and strategic missile facilities. The president has been briefed by senior intelligence and military advisors on potential war scenarios that would involve the U.S. bombing of Iran's most prized and heavily fortified nuclear facility, Fordow. According to the latest reports here in Washington, the U.S. president wants to make sure that disabling Fordow would be necessary, given the intelligence community's assessment on just how close Iran could be to produce a nuclear weapon in a relatively short period of time. The director for Central Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, has reportedly told Trump in private meetings that he believes that Iran is very close to possessing nuclear weapons, though no formal order has been given by Iranian leadership to build the bomb, per U.S. intelligence. President Trump told senior aides that he has approved of attack plans for Iran, but he was holding off to see if Tehran would abandon its nuclear program. One key question weighing in on President Trump's mind: if the U.S. does join Israel's war and drop its massive bunker busters, will they actually destroy Iran's most heavily fortified nuclear facility? Some Israeli officials are concerned that Iran can rebuild its ability to produce a nuclear weapon if the Fordow facility is not neutralized. And according to media reports, Pentagon officials have told Trump that they are confident that they have the necessary weapons capable of penetrating and destroying Fordow. But it's not clear if Trump is totally convinced. Trump has told reporters earlier this week that he wants to hold off on making a final decision regarding Iran until the very last minute, given concerns of a broader and prolonged war in the Arabian Gulf and Middle East. Meanwhile, Israeli strikes seem to have damaged the Arak nuclear complex. That's a major Iranian nuclear facility that is capable of producing plutonium, which at a high enough enrichment rate can be used to build a nuclear weapon. For the U.S. president to agree to the strike on Iran, he would have to be confident that the benefits outweigh the risks and that the U.S. military involvement would guarantee the total eradication of Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions. Ubeshi Bander for A News, Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, on the ground, a growing number of civilians is fleeing from Tehran, with many finding refuge in the central city of Yazd, where hostels are offering free accommodation.
With Israel and Iran's airstrikes now stretching into a second week, more civilians are leaving Tehran in search of safety. In the central city of Yazd, local hostels have opened their doors to people displaced by the unrest.
My friend urged me to take all important and valuable items, and she said there were some free hotels in Yazd. She said we could stay until the dust settles. On the road, we had a lot of stress over fuel and GPS malfunction. We finally got here, and they readily gave us accommodation. We've been here for 2 nights. Yazd is much safer than other cities.
Hostel manager Amir Khani said the decision to provide shelter was a matter of responsibility and compassion.
Since some people have problems for accommodation, we decided to help those having difficulties finding free accommodation.
According to the human rights activist news agency, Israeli airstrikes in Iran have killed 639 people, including senior military figures and nuclear scientists. Israel says at least 24 civilians have been killed by Iranian missile attacks.
Over in Israel, an Iranian missile attack struck the Weizmann Institute of Science. The strike could set research back years, according to Israeli scientists.
Scientists of the Weizmann Institute of Science in Rehovot looked at the extensive damage caused by an Iranian missile on Sunday to see if they could save some of their research. While no one was killed, it caused heavy damage to multiple labs, snuffing out years of scientific research and sending a chilling message to Israeli scientists that they and their expertise are now targets in the escalating conflict with Iran.
We were hit by an Iranian missile attack that was early Sunday morning. Several of our buildings were damaged. 2 of our buildings were directly hit. Luckily for us, there were no casualties, so there were nobody in the buildings. The buildings were empty, and I think that's the most important thing. None of our students, postdocs, faculty, researchers, nobody was hurt. We did our best to save as much of the samples as we could from the labs, from the buildings, while we were fighting the fire, for example. Clearly, a lot has been destroyed.
The strike on the institute came amid a barrage of missiles and drones launched from Iran towards Israel in retaliation for Israel's strikes, which began Friday, the 13th of June. The extensive damage could potentially set back the research for years.
It will take us a lot of time to essentially recover from this, because some of these experiments really took a lot of time, and we collected tissues. For example, experiment that ran for half a year or 1 year, and you collect the entire process, you collect the tissues from, and you wanted to analyze all these tissue in 1 day, and you realize that there are no tissues. Everything is gone. I would estimate that it will take us about a year to get into a full gear of research and with everything working again. But again, I want to emphasize that some of this research we will not be able to recover.
The Weizmann Institute, like many Israeli research centers, has ties to the defense sector, including collaborations with firms like Elbit Systems. It's one reason experts believe it became a target in this escalating conflict.
Oil prices fell sharply after the announcement from Washington that the U.S. will, for now, stay out of the Israeli-Iranian conflict.
Global oil prices fall despite growing economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. Brent crude drops 2.6% to $75.28 a barrel, while US benchmark WTI slides 2.4%, now trading at $73.23. Although tensions between Iran and Israel raise concerns about potential supply disruptions, oil prices are falling as markets respond to reports that President Donald Trump is hesitant to intervene in the conflict. US hesitation to intervene lowers the risk of a wider conflict that could disrupt Middle East oil supplies. This reduced threat eases market fears and puts downward pressure on oil prices. Meanwhile, the Fed's updated projections are also weighing on oil prices. In its latest meeting, the Fed raised its year-end core personal consumption expenditures inflation forecast from 2.8% to 3.1%, while lowering its growth forecast from 1.7% to 1.4%. This suggests the Fed may pause planned interest rate cuts if inflation continues to rise. Higher interest rates tend to strengthen the US dollar against other currencies, making oil more expensive for buyers abroad. This can reduce global oil demand and put further downward pressure on prices.
Denmark will continue preparing Ukraine for European Union membership despite Hungary blocking negotiations, according to the country's European Affairs Minister. Copenhagen is set to assume the rotating presidency of the European Council in July, and Denmark has said it would put pressure on Hungary, while at the same time do everything it can to make Ukraine continue with necessary reforms. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has strongly opposed providing NATO and EU aid to Ukraine, saying the country's EU membership would severely impact Hungarian farmers and the wider economy. An overnight Russian drone attack on Ukraine's Odessa killed at least one and injured another 14 people, according to local officials. The strikes damaged high-rise buildings, a university, and key railway infrastructure, including the port city's main station. Ukraine's Air Force reported 86 Russian drones overnight, saying 34 were shot down with others disrupted. Despite defenses, drones struck at least 8 sites. The Dutch are beefing up security ahead of next week's NATO summit in The Hague. Thousands of soldiers and police officers are to secure the event, while the Navy has deployed 7 frigates to monitor sea and air activity.
Leaders from 32 NATO countries, including US President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, are heading to The Hague for next week's summit. As the city prepares to host the high-level gathering, the Netherlands is launching its largest ever security operation to ensure the event runs safely. The Dutch Navy has deployed 7 frigates, and Belgium has added 1 vessel to monitor activity at sea and in the air. The operation, called Orange Shield, involves thousands of soldiers, police officers, maritime helicopters, secure motorcades and sea patrols.
The danger is that we can be surprised by a threat which is coming to the NATO summit, and we want to prevent that. So the aim is to observe everything what's happening in the area, at sea and in the air, and therefore we are operating here. And in the case of an escalation, we can conduct operations to ensure the safety of the NATO summit.
Security officials say no specific threats have been identified, but the early announcement of the summit gives potential attackers time to plan. The Netherlands currently has a terrorism threat level of 4 on a 5-point scale. NATO leaders are expected to agree on a new defence spending goal of 5% of GDP at the summit in The Hague, a move seen as a major diplomatic win for US President Donald Trump. The target includes 3.5% for core military spending and 1.5% for areas like infrastructure and cyber defence. Trump, who has repeatedly pressed allies to spend more, is likely to claim the agreement as a personal success.
Well, I think NATO should have 5%, yeah.
But experts say the real test will be how quickly the pledge is implemented, with member states divided over a timeline. Analysts say the summit aims to reaffirm NATO's unity and credibility. A short final communiqué is expected, focusing on the 5% goal and alliance solidarity.
Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have completed the Caspian Breeze 2025 joint military exercises held in the Kazakh sector of the Caspian Sea near Aktau. The drills included live-fire exercises targeting sea and air threats, destruction of floating mines, air defense drills, asymmetric threat responses, and the search and rescue of ships and aircraft in distress. Kyrgyzstan has hosted the Collective Security Treaty Organization's first-ever cybersecurity conference. Delegates from across the CSTO bloc gathered to tackle cyber threats from espionage to online terrorism. With over 5 million cyber attacks recorded in Kyrgyzstan alone last year, 70% of which were neutralized and the remainder deemed low risk, leaders called for stronger regional cooperation and warned of a growing cyber arms race. Georgia's breakaway Russian-backed region of Abkhazia's de facto foreign minister is pushing for international recognition among the post-Soviet states. Tbilisi slammed his efforts as a direct challenge to Georgia's territorial integrity. Nini Nikolaishvili has more on that in Tbilisi.
Unrecognized Abkhazia's de facto foreign minister Oleg Bartsits says that Georgia's breakaway region aims to expand its international recognition, particularly among the post-Soviet states. In an interview with Russia's Izvestia, the separatist leader of Abkhazia, Bartsits, argued that the breakaway region has always been part of the Eurasian and post-Soviet space, and its lack of recognition is merely a reflection of current political realities, not a cause for a concern. He underlined the intentions to deepen ties with countries that once constituted Soviet membership, calling for constructive cooperation and partnership. Bartsits also expressed interest what he called the common state format, although he did not specify the entail. Although there are only a few countries that recognize Abkhazia as independent, most notably Russia, Tbilisi sees this outreach as a direct challenge to Georgia's territorial integrity. This statement comes amid ongoing tensions between Russia and the West and growing concern in Tbilisi that Moscow may use hybrid and diplomatic tools to further undermine its sovereignty. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has met Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Istanbul on a rare visit to Turkey. Yerevan has described the trip as a historic step toward regional peace. The agenda of the talks at Istanbul's Dolmabahce Palace is not known. Armenia and Turkey have never established formal diplomatic ties, and their shared border has been closed since the 1990s. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk warned that Armenia's deepening ties with the EU could cost up to $6 billion in lost trade with Russia by the end of 2025. He stressed that Armenia cannot be in both the EU and the Eurasian Economic Union, as that would effectively sever its tariff-free access to Russia's market. Overchuk also called for regulatory reform and expanded border capacity to stabilize and revive Russia-Armenia trade channels. The visit of representatives from the diplomatic corps accredited in Azerbaijan to eastern Zangezur and Karabakh has begun. The diplomatic delegation visited Lachin and observed the reconstruction process. Our Lou Brown brings the report.
Lachin is no longer just a name on a map of conflict. It's becoming a symbol of a comeback. A group of around 100 diplomats, military attachés, and international representatives accredited in Azerbaijan have traveled to Lachin to witness firsthand the region's dramatic transformation. Their visit began with a symbolic landing at the newly built Lachin International Airport. More than just an airstrip, it stands as a powerful emblem of return, revival, and renewal.
Today turned around 3,500 people, local people. They meet new houses here, and it was very comfortable for them to live at the same time to work. And the challenge, yes, of course, this is a new image of a new Latvian city. It's a first challenge. Another thing, as I said, we use also new technology in the construction sector in creating job places and everywhere, as you say, because before it was not here one cinema production places like just film. You have been there. It's a new area for making cinema, and we constructing also new building of theater, new building of concert hall, and also we try we try also for new photographic school here, and I think a lot of new area can we change.
As the delegation toured the city, the scale of the post-war reconstruction was evident. Streets once abandoned now echo with life. Families are returning. The city is steadily regaining its pulse. At Hoc as Film, a new film studio named after Latvian's iconic cliffs, guests learned about plans to revitalize Azerbaijani national cinema and breathe new energy into the country's creative industries. The group then visited the Yord Gallery, home to traditional carpets, paintings, and rare photographs of Latvian before the occupation. It's a space where memory and heritage are carefully preserved and proudly shared. Next came a stop at the Latvinima Cultural Centre and the modern Latvian Cinema Club, newly built facilities designed for the city's growing population. How the cultural heartbeat of Latvian is being restored one step at a time.
This is my second time in Latvian. I came in 2023, and seeing the improvements of infrastructure is just amazing. At the time, there were already some institutions, but now seeing them operating and more live, that people are living here, making their daily life, is very interesting and very nice to see that some people could return to where they belong, and it was quite nice.
At Gillaby Ceramics, diplomats observed local artisans turning clay into intricate works of art, tangible reflections of Latvian's heritage and its enduring traditions. Later, along the banks of the Hakari River, the pace slowed. Surrounded by nature, delegates learned about the area's biodiversity and ongoing environmental restoration efforts. A symbolic moment came as fish fry were released into the river, part of an initiative to heal the damaged ecosystem. From arts to ecology, Latvian is not just rebuilding, it's reimagining its future with confidence and care. We are now standing by for the second day of the diplomatic visit, which will continue deeper into the Carabao region.
The second and final day of Baku ID brought together global investors, startup founders, and innovation leaders. From new partnerships and investment deals to bold ideas and future-focused projects, the event showcased Baku's role as a regional innovation hub. Our Aysel Ibrahimova has more.
But when you present your work, it's a different thing.
Baku ID is where startup founders find their big break, investors discover the next game changer, and the participants uncover endless inspiration. It's a dynamic platform that turns dreamers into doers and their ideas into impact.
It's the second and final day of Baku ID, but the energy hasn't slowed down. From high-level meetings to hands-on pitches and global conversations, the 2025 edition once again raised the bar. What makes this year stand out? The growing international footprint.
Every year Baku ID has been bigger and bigger, and every year Baku ID had a certain agenda. This year it's the biggest we've had so far in terms of the guests we were able to attract from a very diverse geographical area as well. We have delegations from the Middle East, from Egypt, from Europe, and this is what's most exciting, that Baku ID has become a platform that doesn't just bring the local and regional ecosystem together, but the global.
As the tech scene in the region matures, so does investor interest. At this year's Baku ID, connections aren't just being made, they're being formalized. One of the major milestones today was a memorandum signing between Ard Venture, Sabah Hub and Sabah Fund to strengthen cross-border collaboration and build a shared startup infrastructure between Turkey and Azerbaijan.
Bakü Ay'da bulunmamızdaki temel sebeplerden birisi özellikle Türkiye'de
One of the main reasons for our presence at Baku ID is to act as a bridge by bringing the technology investment ecosystem we have developed in Turkey to our brother country, Azerbaijan. We aim to facilitate a two-way investment flow, encouraging investors in Turkey to invest in companies based in Baku, and enabling investors in Baku to invest in startups in Turkey. In cooperation with Sabah Hub, we have launched an initiative to establish a technology investment office in Baku. Through this, we intend to create a shared platform with physical spaces in both Baku and Turkey to support investment and technology transfer between the two countries.
Bir platformda yatırım ve teknoloji transferi yapmak için iki ülke arasında böyle bir sürece girdik kendileri.
At events like Baku ID, it's not just about what's happening today, it's about where things are going tomorrow. And Sabah City is one of the most ambitious steps yet. Designed to power Azerbaijan's innovation ecosystem through cutting-edge infrastructure and education, it offers a glimpse into what the future could look like for research, AI and startups in the country.
Its contribution to the innovation and scientific research ecosystem primarily lies in the infrastructure it will provide. Within this framework, the construction of new and modern scientific research facilities, artificial intelligence laboratories, classrooms, co-working centers for startups, and other infrastructure units is planned. The project also includes institutional support, offering startups access to various incentives such as tax and customs exemptions.
Several startups will secure new funding today, but some are already reaping the rewards. Their vision has evolved over just 2 days at Baku ID.
I am the founder of the BioShell. At BioShell, we are transforming the hazelnut shells into bioplastics, which is going to cut the carbon emissions and prevent the plastic pollution as well. And at Baku ID, we are today have a stand here, and it's a great opportunity for us to have a connection with the key players in the region and expand our vision as well. And as we attended here, I noticed that our startup and our technology isn't just limited in Azerbaijan. And I saw that how we can expand our vision and our technology in the globe as well.
Baku ID 2025 ends with new deals, bold ideas and a clear message. The future of innovation starts here.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and do stay tuned to A News.